This is not breaking news. This is not a scandal. This is not about one person. This is quieter than that. And that's why it's more dangerous. What's shifting right now doesn't announce itself with sirens or headlines. It changes rules. It changes expectations. It changes what power looks like without asking for permission. You're told it's about stability. You're told it's about order. You're told it's about fixing what failed. But underneath that language, something else is happening. A system is learning that it no longer needs consent to function. That legitimacy can be delayed. That sovereignty can be conditional. That outcomes matter more than rules. And once a system learns that, it doesn't unlearn it. If you think this has nothing to do with you, stay with me, because the effects don't stay where they start. Watch closely. Not because this is loud, but because it's already moving. What actually controls the system now isn't ideology. It isn't elections. It isn't even borders. It's leverage, not the kind you vote on. The kind that decides who gets stabilized and who gets managed. Power no longer flows from legitimacy upward. It flows from functionality downward. From whoever can restore order fastest, from whoever can keep prices low, borders quiet, and disruptions contained. This is how the frame quietly flips. States aren't judged by values anymore. They're judged by performance. If a system breaks, someone steps in, not to represent it, to run it. And the justification always sounds reasonable. Fix first, decide later. Security before politics, economy before consent. The language is clean, technocratic, almost comforting. But notice what disappears inside that logic. Choice becomes optional. Time frames become elastic. And authority concentrates where results are fastest. This isn't chaos, it's efficiency. And once efficiency becomes the metric, everything else starts to look expendable. Stay with me, because this didn't happen overnight. It was normalized slowly. There was a time when intervention meant exception, a last resort, a failure of diplomacy. That time didn't end loudly. It faded. Before, force required justification. Now, justification arrives after the fact, wrapped in results. Before, sovereignty was presumed. Now, it's provisional. What changed wasn't policy. It was patience. Systems learned that waiting for legitimacy was inefficient. That disorder spreads faster than consensus. That slow collapse is more dangerous than sudden shock. So the shift happened quietly, first in language, then in sequencing. Stabilize first, rebuild later, decide eventually. Each step sounded temporary. Each delay sounded reasonable. And because nothing exploded immediately, because prices fell, because borders calmed, because markets breathed, the change felt successful. But slow change is the hardest to see and the hardest to stop. Because by the time you notice what's different, the old rules already feel outdated. Hold that thought, because the first visible shock is never the cause. Then the system tests itself. Not in theory. In practice, a country stops being treated as a negotiation partner and starts being treated as a problem to be fixed. Control moves from pressure to presence, from influence to occupation, from advising to running. Suddenly, timelines don't matter. Calendars disappear. Everything becomes until it works. You're told this is temporary, that it's necessary, that nothing else could have stopped the bleeding. And on the surface, it works. The chaos slows. The flow reverses. The metrics improve. That's the shock. Because the shock isn't the force. It's the precedent. Once a system proves it can step in, take over, and extract results. The question is no longer should it, the question becomes where next? If this feels distant, don't relax. Because what looks like a one-off solution is already being reused. And the next test won't look like the first. Here's how the system actually works. It doesn't conquer to rule. It manages to extract. Control isn't about flags. It's about flow. Who controls the infrastructure? Who decides when it runs? Who collects first and reimburses later? Costs are framed as investments. Losses are reframed as stabilization expenses. And revenue becomes proof of success. This is where the balance tilts, because the ones who step in don't absorb the damage. They securitize it. They monetize recovery. They turn disorder into yield. The local system carries the disruption. The external system collects the upside. And because some value is returned, because something improves, the arrangement looks mutual, but it isn't equal. One side waits for sovereignty to be restored. The other decides when it's earned. This is not chaos. It's design. And once the design proves profitable, it doesn't stay contained. It looks for the next broken system that can be made to work. Then it accelerates, not gradually, abruptly, because once control works in one place, it's tested somewhere else. Pressure turns kinetic. Warnings turn deadlines. Deadlines turn strikes. There's no long debate. No extended process, just execution. Targets are narrow. Damage is precise. The message is broad. This isn't about punishment. It's about removal. Remove the leverage. Remove the deterrent. Remove the thing that froze everyone else in place. And when it's gone, everything around it moves. Allies realign. Markets reset. Old fears evaporate. That's the second shock, because the speed is the point. Fast enough to prevent resistance, clean enough to discourage reversal. And when people realize how quickly the balance flipped, they don't ask who authorized it. They ask who's next. This is where it reaches you, not as policy, as pressure. Because when systems optimize for speed and control, they don't ask who absorbs the friction. You do. You feel it when decisions are made far away, but justified as necessary. When timelines stretch without explanation. When authority moves faster than accountability. You're told it's working, that the numbers look better. That stability has been restored. And maybe that's true, but notice what you're not asked. You're not asked to consent. You're not asked to decide. You're asked to adapt. This is the quiet trade. Order in exchange for voice, efficiency in exchange for delay. If that feels uncomfortable, it should, because once systems learn they can bypass consent, they don't reserve that move for emergencies. Stay with me, because what starts as foreign policy never stays foreign. This doesn't stay contained, because once the model works, it travels. Other systems watch, not to copy the language, to copy the leverage, control without occupation, stability without permission, outcomes without debate. What was once extraordinary becomes instructional. Alliances reorganize around predictability, not principle. Supply chains reroute around whoever can guarantee flow. Risk premiums vanish not because danger is gone, but because it's being managed by force. And that changes behavior everywhere. States stop asking what they're allowed to do. They ask what they can get away with, what they can stabilize, what they can delay. This is how a precedent becomes architecture. No declaration, no treaty, just alignment. And when enough systems align this way, the old safeguards don't fail dramatically. They simply stop being referenced. Hold that uncertainty, because once the world adjusts to this logic, reversal becomes the anomaly. From here, the system doesn't pause. It accelerates, and it doesn't accelerate in one direction. There are three paths now. The first looks reasonable. Adjustment, systems adapt to the new logic. Oversight is rebranded. Delays are formalized. Control is normalized but managed carefully enough to avoid backlash. It works until it doesn't. The second path is quieter. Erosion. Rules remain on paper, but not in practice. Consent becomes ceremonial. Exceptions stack. Emergency logic becomes permanent logic. Nothing breaks at once. Things just stop resisting. The third path is faster. Rupture. The moment when conditional sovereignty is rejected outright, when managed systems push back, when force meets exhaustion, when efficiency collides with legitimacy. None of these paths announce themselves. They overlap, they compete, and the system doesn't choose among them. It responds to pressure, which means the future isn't decided by intent. It's decided by stress. And the stress is building. This is where the danger settles in. Not because something failed, but because it worked. A system that can suspend rules without collapsing doesn't rush to restore them. It waits. It watches. It measures resistance. And the longer it holds, the more natural it feels. What you're living inside now isn't a crisis moment. It's a proving phase, testing how much control can be normalized, how long consent can be delayed, how easily stability can replace choice. Nothing forces a reset. Nothing guarantees one. That's the point. If you're looking for a villain, you'll miss it. If you're waiting for an announcement, it won't come. This system doesn't declare itself. It expands quietly, one exception at a time. If you want to understand where this goes next, you can't stop here, because the next move isn't louder. It's subtler. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Stay with me.